Bitcoin. It's worth a ton. You can probably remember a time when Bitcoin was worth only $120. As I write this, it's sitting at about $2,500 or 25 times that much. Any sensible person would be scrambling to buy up as much Bitcoin as they can, hoping that the price will go up. Should you? Well, no. See, when you buy something just because you think the price is going to go up, it's speculation. Speculation is rarely a good investment because only the people who get in on the speculation early make any money. The price of the commodity goes up because everyone's buying it, but eventually it comes crashing back down. So is Bitcoin going up in value only because speculators are driving up the price? Well, no. As more and more people put money into the Bitcoin system, its market cap or market capitalization increases. That basically means that since people have put X amount of real-world dollars into the Bitcoin system, all Bitcoins put together must be worth at least that much, right? Imagine you have a company that makes blenders. You want to take your company public, so you decide to sell $1 million worth of shares. In fact, your company is so good that some investors go and they buy all $1 million worth of shares in your company right away. Now, from the outside of the company, you don't really know what's going on, but you do know that at least $1 million worth of outside money went in. Since businesses are meant to make money, everyone was probably hoping that at least $1 million, if not more, was eventually going to come back out. Therefore, if their hopes are correct, your company is worth at least the $1 million that went into it. That's called a market cap. So one explanation for the rising value of Bitcoin is that people keep pouring their real-world dollars into Bitcoin. They do this by buying Bitcoins, typically from a miner, who has invested in the computer, internet, and electricity infrastructure to mine Bitcoins at a large scale. As you may know, the cost to mine a Bitcoin goes up with each Bitcoin that is mined. This doesn't explain why Bitcoin is worth so much, but it does help explain the speculators' hopes of a huge return on their efforts. In this way, a Bitcoin is like a special pair of Kanye West Yeezy Adidas shoes. There's nothing special about them, but since there's a limited amount, their price is high and time keeps driving the price even higher. That's why a pair of Yeezys goes for $1,000 on eBay. Hell, even the box is worth more than a normal pair of shoes. But wait a minute, Daniel. Blenders, Adidas shoes, these are all things I can use. Of course they have some value because they can alternatively keep your feet dry and comfy or turn fruits into delicious smoothies. So what does Bitcoin do? In fact, Bitcoin does something so useful it's worth way more than blenders or even shoes. This is where things get complicated. Bitcoin is innately valuable because of what it does. The technical reasons are complicated and a bit beyond the scope of this talk, but basically, 1. Bitcoins, once you transfer them, can't be taken back. That's not because of some outside laws or charter that has to be enforced by people. It's mathematically impossible. The only way you could do it is if you had a computer that was so strong it was more powerful than half of all the other computers in the world put together. Now, if you want me to explain this more in another video, please post so in the comments. But for now, let's move on to the next reason. Reason number 2 why Bitcoin is valuable is as follows. Bitcoins cannot be seized by an outside authority unless they physically seize you or whatever device you're using as your key. To seize someone's Bitcoins is once again mathematically impossible. You can, of course, simply be mugged or threatened with physical violence for your key, but since Bitcoin encourages you to have thousands of keys and spread your wealth up among all of them, no one should really be able to know that you have a large amount of wealth in Bitcoins to begin with. Of course, if you tried to stash your real currency in 1,000 different accounts, this would be illegal because governments like to suppress anything that might restrict their ability to rob you. Don't take my word for it. The value of Bitcoin is basically a vote of non-confidence in the value of sovereign currencies. Holding a Bitcoin is like shorting all the sovereign currencies in the world at the same time. Imagine a perfect country. I'll call it Perfectia. Perfectia is run by a government with no flaws of character, who tell the truth 100% of the time, and whose country is so well run there is zero risk of it ever collapsing or going bankrupt. If such a country existed, we wouldn't need Bitcoin because we could just buy Perfectia dollars. And we would know with certainty that our money wouldn't lose all its value all at once. Unfortunately, there is no Perfectia, and all the governments of the world will eventually make a misstep and their currency might collapse. But Bitcoin functions just like the Perfectia dollar I told you about in my example. Reason number 3. Bitcoin has no central authority. It is a decentralized currency. There is no government that can print more of them at will, and they're not backed by any country. If you have a currency and the sovereign who backs it collapses, the currency loses a lot of value. Bitcoin is resistant to this because it has no central authority. And every time a real world currency, like a US dollar, does crash, the actual value of Bitcoin will probably shoot way, way up. So the 3 qualities that Bitcoin has is that there's no takesies backsies, it can't be stolen except by physical force, and no one knows that you have any of it. In other words, these are all 3 qualities people really want their money to innately have. In fact, Bitcoin solves so many problems relating to traditional currency that when you think about it, there's no reason to use paper dollars or gold at all. It's actually absurd to exchange a puny slip of paper for a new car. The only reason that paper, currency, coins, and silver dollars exist is because they were the best solution for this problem until Bitcoin came along. They were good before Bitcoin tools, but this is the after Bitcoin time. I, for one, basically expect the government to devalue any currency I have over time. They have an incentive to do this and have been doing so for thousands of years. French monetary authorities used to recall all the silver pennies in France so they could recast them with less silver and keep the profits. As a sovereign, this is a great way to put extra money in your pocket. Now, in countries like the United States and Canada, where a strong media generally keeps governmental japery to a minimum, this happens a bit more rarely. And the government needs to be a bit smarter when they devalue a currency and rob their country, but they still do it. Just have a look at the 2008 financial crisis if you don't believe me. Conversely, in other countries like Brazil, Venezuela, Nigeria, Angola, or China, the government just totally does what it wants. For the citizens of these countries, governmental devaluation of a currency is a certainty. Is it any wonder why Bitcoin is so heavily regulated in countries like China? The government knows that controlling the central currency is the best way to become rich at the expense of the people. Beijing recognizes the threat Bitcoin poses to its authoritarian profit machine. The residents of countries like China, Nigeria, and Angola desperately want to put as much of their wealth as they can in Bitcoin. All of it, if possible, because it provides the best existing guarantee that their money won't suddenly lose all of its value at once. And you see, that's the reason why you hold Bitcoin. The fact that the coins themselves keep skyrocketing in value is just a bonus. That's not the reason to buy them. My hypothesis is as follows. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will completely replace money, and maybe a lot sooner than you think. It's hard to predict exactly when, but as each major world currency collapses, Bitcoin will absorb a large amount of the remaining market cap in the currencies of the world. In other words, every time the central bank of some country decides it's going to collapse, the value of Bitcoin is going to skyrocket. It's hard to tell exactly when these events will occur, but my guess is the next major one will occur within the next 20 years. Here's the problem right now with Bitcoin. If I have $1 million in Bitcoin and I live in almost any country, it's hard for me to turn my money into cash. Governments use the word money laundering a lot to justify the measures they take to make it so hard for you to turn your Bitcoin into their sovereign currency. But I think what you're really trying to do is something called money protecting, and the government has no business stopping you from doing this. Here's the extremely important question. Why do people want to turn their Bitcoins back into their sovereign dollars? The answer is that currently, most goods and services can only be had for dollars. Most stores don't accept Bitcoin. But why? Generally, people, especially old people, are, well, stupid. They put their faith in a crooked government that they understand instead of a mathematically sound cryptocurrency that they don't. They think that when push comes to shove, this thin piece of paper minted by an authority that lives in a fancy house is a safer bet than a tool mathematically designed just to be good money. Of course, the opposite is true, and Bitcoin is much better as a currency than these little pieces of paper. As old people die out and young people start to run and own businesses, Bitcoin will become ubiquitous as a means of exchange. In time, all stores will accept Bitcoin, and there won't be any further need for any sovereign currencies. It will cut real-world fiat currencies out completely. In not too long, you'll be able to buy more stuff with your Bitcoin than with sovereign currencies, like in some countries where the currency has already collapsed. In other words, it's basically a certainty that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will absorb all the market capitalization in the world of every other sovereign currency. Bitcoin will displace all fiat currencies, and the true value of a Bitcoin will be the entire market cap of the world, divided by the number of Bitcoins. And that's why Bitcoin continues to go up. It's certain to displace fiat currency, and every time it does, the market capitalization of that currency will go into Bitcoin. The higher the market cap of Bitcoin, the more valuable an individual Bitcoin is. The only threat to Bitcoin being dominant is a different, better cryptocurrency, which is a topic for a different discussion, but it's not a regular paper money sovereign currency. Thus, to conclude, Bitcoin is worth so damn much because it works much better as a currency than dollars or cents. The only reason it's not worth literally 1 billion times more than it is right now isn't because of any flaw of the currency, it's a flaw in people. People are slow to adopt new ideas, no matter how good they are. Will this slowness to adopt ideas be your fatal flaw? In my opinion, cryptocurrency can't be stopped. Attempts like Beijing's to stamp it out is just a boy sticking his finger into the dam, trying to keep all the water from pouring out. The dam will break soon enough, and Bitcoin will absorb the market cap of all the currencies in the world. The only question is, when? Well, I hope you very much enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please subscribe. And if you want to buy some Bitcoin, I found a great price for you, and I've set it up in the link below. So just click the link and you can get started buying some Bitcoin right away.